Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, thank you for being here today. I'm Marion Willard. I work at INRIA, the French National Institute for Research in Digital Science and Technology. I'm also involved in the VISION project. As such, I'm delighted to present you the session, VISION4AI, Meet the ICT-48 Networks of AI Excellence, being held in the framework of the European AI Week, organized by AI for Belgium in collaboration with the CLAIRE Network and VISION. The 2022 edition of the European AI Week, which started on Monday, had over 100 sessions with 400 speakers coming from 37 different countries worldwide. So we are happy to be in this event and to introduce you to the vibrant AI ecosystem existing in Europe. In today's session, you will get an insight into the new set of European networks of AI excellence centers launched in September 2020, namely AI for Media, ELISE, HumanE-AI-Net, and TAILOR, and also of the VISION project that brings these networks together to create a world-class AI ecosystem. So in a moment, we'll have the opening remarks by Holger, who will present the VISION project, followed by presentations of the achievements and work in progress in the 4 ICT-48 networks of excellence. During those presentations, you will have the opportunity to ask questions via Slido. So please use the flash code on screen or use the link posted in the YouTube comments section. So I will now give the floor to Holger, project coordinator of VISION. Holger, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted to be in such good company with representatives from all 4 ICT-48 networks, and of course also from VISION itself. I actually didn't prepare slides for this because I want to keep this rather brief. I think, the stars of today are the representatives of the networks, or actually the networks themselves. But I do want to give a little bit of an overall perspective. ICT-48 was a call in the context of Horizon 2020, funded at 50 million euros over 3 or 4 years respectively. Currently, the networks that have had a 3-year duration are being extended to match the one network that from the very beginning was 4 years, so that everybody is a little bit more synchronized. So that breaks down into 12 million euros for each of the 4 networks of centers of excellence and 2 million euros for the coordination and support action, which is VISION. Why did the European Commission decide to fund 4 networks rather than just 1? Well, unfortunately, we don't have anybody from the Commission here in the session today to ask this question, but I imagine the answer would be in order to better reflect the diversity of perspective and the diversity of community that is Europe. And I'm sure that over the next hour and a bit, you will see plenty of evidence how these 4 different networks bring very different capabilities, perspective, and ultimately also people to the table. What is sometimes easy to overlook is that these networks actually do have intersections and they do follow some common goals, of course. Jointly, we want to position Europe for success in human-centered, trustworthy AI. That is the big goal of the European Commission, of European Parliament, of the member states, of the communities behind the 4 networks, the AI community of Europe. And so the 4 networks give us a chance to explore simultaneously and in coordination 4 different perspectives, 4 different approaches, and also to address 4 slightly different sets of challenges and problems across those networks. Nevertheless, it is of course beneficial to have these networks interact with each other, which isn't exactly helped by the pandemic that has made it difficult for all of us to come together physically. Of course, now we should really be in Brussels, right? And unfortunately, we're once again only online. We hope that that will change very soon. But in the meanwhile, I think it's absolutely fascinating to see how even in online events and through online coordination, these 4 networks are starting to not only work within each network with surprising and amazing efficiency, but also they start working together across the network boundaries. And I think just about 18 months in. This is really fantastic to see, and it's very encouraging that they still are 2.5 years in this funding program left to further intensify this collaboration. To be honest with you, if under such difficult circumstances we manage to get joint activities, of which you will hear quite a bit in the session as well, going to the extent that we have, what can we do in the remaining 2.5 years? The VISION project is there to facilitate and to help these cross-network activities, to help identify best practices and insights from within the 4 networks, to lift them up and to make them usable and beneficial to all 4 networks and the broader communities connected by and through these networks. We organize events such as the theme development workshops that will be discussed in quite some detail later. We are involved in the AI Doctoral Academy initiated by one of the 4 networks, of which we will also hear quite a bit later. And of course, we have started creating various roundtable situations in which, for instance, the coordinators of the networks, the project managers of the networks, the communications people from the 4 networks talk together regularly and exchange their ideas, best practices, and insights. This we very much look forward to continue doing. And it doesn't stop with the ICT-48 networks, it goes quite a bit beyond them. The European Commission is establishing additional networks of centers of excellence, which we very much hope and intend to also connect together via this vision mechanism. So with that said, I think we should move to the main elements of the program, which of course are the 4 networks: AI for Media, ELISE, HumanE-AI-Net, and TAILOR. Back to you, Marianne.
Thank you, Holger, for this brief overview of Vision and the 4 networks of excellence. We will now go on to Dr. Ioannis Kompatsiaris, AI for Media Project Coordinator. Dr. Ioannis Kompatsiaris is the director of CERTH-ITI and the head of the Multimedia, Knowledge and Social Media Analytics Laboratory. He is a senior member of IEEE and ACM. Since January 2014, he is a co-founder of the Infalia private company, a high-tech SME focusing on data-intensive web services and applications. He will now present you the AI for Media project, its latest status and main achievements. Ioannis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the introduction. Let me share my slides. I think I need some access.
It should be good. Can you please try? Otherwise, the tech service will give you the access.
Let me try again. No, it says host this. Okay. Now must be okay.
Perfect.
Very nice. Perfect. Yes. I guess you can see my slides in full screen mode.
Yes, it's working well.
Okay. Thank you very much again. And yes, myself, together with my colleague Filareti Tsalakanidou, we are coordinating AI for Media. And as presented, I will show you some information about the project and the latest project and achievements. So first of all, AI for Media is obviously about the media. So what we consider as a media sector in the project, in general multimedia information production and delivery, news and journalism, social media, entertainment, arts and creativity, including computer games. And why we have selected media to be the main domain in our project. There are various aspects, and I start with the one that refers to the social impact. Media has a significant social impact, and if they are used positively, they have the power to nurture and enable a democratic society and improve our lives and creativity. But unfortunately, as we have witnessed many times in the recent years, if they are misused and manipulated, they can lead to polarization and, for example, through disinformation and manipulation, can threaten key societal values. And we have seen this, and we are seeing these societal values like democracy, for example, through manipulation of information in various elections, threat for the public health with disinformation during the pandemic, and very unfortunate threat to peace with disinformation in the current war in Ukraine. But apart from the significant societal impact, there is, of course, related R&D and economic challenges and impact. Media, multimedia, especially the vision part, is a highly demanding domain with many R&D issues still unsolved. And the project, as we will see, try to address many of these issues. And apart from the economic value for the media sector itself, such technologies are applicable to many other domains, including, for example, industry, robotics, and health. So the overall mission of AI for media is to research, develop, and deliver next generation AI research and training, mainly, as I mentioned, for the media sector, and addressing and maintaining key societal values. And in this research, we take into account the key requirements and aspects like ethical, explainable, trustworthy, human-centered, and trusted AI. So here is an overall diagram which shows AI for media main components. In the center, we see the research and innovation activities, which are grouped around four main pillars: new learning paradigms and distributed AI, explainability, content-centered AI, human and society-centered AI. The technologies, the approaches which are developed in these pillars are integrated in use cases which are led by industrial partners, media, SMEs, and large media organizations, where in collaboration with research partners, these technologies are integrated in use cases which are already resulting and will result to working prototypes integrated in the company's workflows. And then there is a number of supporting activities, starting with the European Media AI Academy, in significant activity in training, mostly at PhD level. And then this has been a quite successful initiative, as we will see. And finally, there is also the Cascade funding program, which it is an open call for external partners to get some funding and be integrated in the overall project. And in doing all this, we collaborate with AI for you and, of course, with the rest of the ICT-48 projects. The result of all this will be a virtual center of excellence, where all these resources and results will be available online at the end of the project, and then hopefully also after its end. Before I start with the main activities, just an overview of our time plan. As you can see, we are a four-year project. I think now all ICT-48 projects are four-year ones. We are in month 18, just completing our second milestone, which is the first integration of the outcomes delivered in the first year. So I start with, I think, a very interesting activity also for the rest of the projects and overall for the community, which is what has the Media AI Observatory prepared so far. And there has been an overview of AI policy initiatives, a white paper on the social, economic, and political impact, and a roadmap on AI technologies. So we have been working on policy, technology, and impact-related aspects. So regarding the overview of EU policies and regulations, there is this report available where, as you can see in the diagram, several policy and regulatory initiatives have been gathered, presented, and analyzed, including, for example, the quite recently released the AI Act or the Digital Services Act. And apart from the presentation, for each one of them, there has been an analysis including identified problems, proposed solutions, and expected action. So a quite complete gathering of related policy initiatives, especially at the EU level. Regarding the white paper on the social, economic, and political impact, there are two directions. One is more towards the potential technological impact, and the other is more towards the societal concerns and the impact. And for example, here in one of the areas considered, for example, challenges of AI in news story discovery, it has been identified that, for example, current methods work better on updates on stories that have been already broken, but there is a need to work on how to discover the original breaking of such stories. And regarding the societal concerns and the impact, as you can see, there are some aspects which are common to all AI-related research and domains, like bias and discrimination, inequality in AI access, and so on, transparency, accountability, and so on. But there are some of them which are specific to media, like, for example, how to balance and how to balance media independence and commercialization on the same time, and how to address, as I mentioned in the beginning, this crucial aspect of manipulation and disinformation. And here you can see, I won't go into detail, further analysis for each of these concerns and challenges. Going on with the more technological aspect, we have completed this roadmap on AI technologies and applications for the media industry. It includes a current status, a state of the art, existing and future challenges and opportunities, as I will show examples on how AI technologies can be used in industries, challenges and risks, and so on. And regarding the methodology and the participation in this roadmap, of course, a big part was contributed by the AI for Media Consortium, but we had an open public online survey requesting contribution by the community. And we were very happy to see that we had 150 responders with a very good geographical variation coming from 26 countries in Europe and beyond. And as you can see, it covers a number of aspects and attributes, including core AI research, which can be found in, let's say, any AI-related research roadmap, more specific AI for multimedia applications, horizontal aspects like trustworthy AI applications and so on. And again, on top of the representation and the analysis of all these dimensions, we have identified opportunities where AI can contribute in the media sector, risks. Again, the unethical use of AI with a destructive impact on society appearing first, and challenges. And many of the challenges, like this one, for example, were relevant to industry uptake and how AI can be understood and can be integrated in workflows and in company life cycle. And in order to address this, we have prepared a number of contributions, like, for example, this, again, example AI applications where for several, let's say, subsectors, we have identified potential uses. And I would like to highlight this part, which I think will be very useful and beneficial, the development of vignettes, short stories with media practitioners or users of media as the main characters, which showcase how AI can be used. So, for example, in these ones, in this slide regarding AI for content moderation, there is a content moderator on a new multiplayer team game, and then in this everyday life story, it is shown how AI can help. And similar, for example, with Danai being a journalist working in a small local news outlet. We believe this will be of great help in order for practitioners to understand what AI can do and how even more importantly, can be integrated in their everyday work. And this roadmap has become a huge document containing a lot of information. So apart from the document, let's say the deliverable itself, we plan, and it will be ready soon at the end of this month, to develop a web version where someone can more efficiently navigate through the various sections, examples, and so on, and see all this information. Going on with the more research and innovation activities and contribution, as I have presented, there are four main pillars: learning paradigms, trustworthy AI, human and society-centered AI, content-centered AI. The ones on the left are, let's say, more core AI, more fundamental AI, and on the right, they are the ones which are more media and multimedia content related. So I won't go into details. There has been a lot of work resulting to a number of high quality publications and events in all of these topics, and as you can see, subtopics. I just highlight in the slide some more specific directions and the results, just some example results. So, for example, in the new learning paradigms, transfer learning, domain adaptation has been the emphasis, which is something very necessary in media applications in order to address the need for large-scale annotated data sets, which are not easy to produce. Regarding trustworthy AI, you can see here again tools for robust, explainable, fair, and privacy-preserving AI. So not only publications and events, but also toolbox. And in this case, Also, I think a very useful platform for benchmarking, which is, can be used in order to enhance reproducibility and enable comparison between approaches. And it is going to be used this year in a quite popular and well-established benchmarking competition. Also in content-centered AI, more traditional media analysis and summarization techniques. And in human and society-centered AI, the more, let's say, obviously human-centered and with significant societal impact approaches, like the ones I have mentioned, including manipulated and synthetic content detection, privacy-enhanced recommendation systems, and so on. Here you can see some even more specific examples, like detection of deepfakes, either tweets or image and video deepfakes, data sets and analysis of news around COVID-19 or local news around COVID-19, and more specific approaches, including prediction of image interestings or aspects of privacy when sharing content. As I mentioned, these have appeared and contributed to a number of events, organization and co-organization. And I go on with IDA, a very successful, I think, initiative, a PhD program on the AI. I have to say that this is an initiative co-founded by all ICT-48 projects, so all of them jointly initiated and are running this initiative, which is mainly about coordinating existing PhD and postdoc AI training activities. And I think a significant contribution has been so far, apart from the program itself, the definition of a quite simple and efficient mechanism for inter-university sharing of educational assets. And I think that the results are quite impressive so far. There are already 73 participating members, 55 universities and 18 research organizations. There is already 3 curricula on AI core, AI and media, AI and society, with 110 lecturers providing lectures. And there are around more than 150, 167 students, around 150 of them being PhD students and 90 professionals. And there are some additional related activities, like, again, a successful AI excellence lecture series with 21 lectures so far, summer schools and a methodology symposium. Here is an example of upcoming and past lectures in the framework of IDA. And I think it is very important that all videos are available on the website and the YouTube channel. And I go on with the use cases. Okay, I think I'm okay regarding time. I go on with the use cases. There are 7 of them. As I have told you, it is where industry and research collaboration and integration takes place. There has been a quite intensive user requirement gathering phase during a co-creation process. Also, at this stage, there has been a strong collaboration between research and media industry partners. It resulted to a number of requirements, over 450 of them. And based on these requirements, we now have the first version of these use case demonstrators, which are mostly existing applications which were used by the media partners, but they have been enhanced, I would say updated, with AI functionalities which are developed within AI for media. And you can see the use cases are about addressing, detecting disinformation, content, computer games generation, content organization, and so on. And in these boxes, you can see which partners mainly collaborate for the development of the use cases. And I go on with the networking aspects of the project. Right from the beginning, we had in mind to expand our activities and outreach beyond the consortium members. So we have this group of associate members. There are, let's say, partners external to the project, but in close contact with the project, receiving communications, exchanging information, and so on. And there are already 41 of them. I will show you the results of the first open call for external, again, partners to be funded, this time with funding by the project, and our Junior Fellows Exchange program. So just an overview of this network of associate members, 41 of them coming from 17 countries, not only from Europe. And as you can see, there is a quite good balance between academic research institutions and then industrial organizations and clusters. And regarding the open call, the call was published in beginning of September. We have announced 2 tracks, one research, one application, with 7 challenges identified and an open challenge. We received 60 project proposals, and we had to select 10 projects which were selected after an evaluation by 10 external experts. And the projects officially started on March 1st with a duration of 9 months for research and 12 for application projects. So we are happy to have these 10 projects and these additional collaborators. You can see in various research and application aspects, like, for example, this one, the development of bio-inspired, resource-efficient deep learning models. It is a significant, interesting direction which was not covered very well by the project, and we expect both to gain significant experience through the project, but also to contribute to the project with ongoing research within AI for media. And or, for example, like this one, where we are going to have additional tools and applications regarding, for example, in this case, preventing of misinformation, which is a key project objective. And we have also this Junior Fellows Exchange program. It is a mobility program, a quite flexible scheme, which allows anyone to exchange, to collaborate, to make a visit with an AI for media partner. So there is a hosting and a sending organization. Just one of them has to be an AI for media partner. So it is open to anyone. And so far, mainly due to the pandemic, we had a relatively low number of applications, but there are already 20, 9 with external organizations, And we have also seen recently that these applications and visits are constantly increasing. So here is a view of how we see our networking activities, starting with the AI for Media consortium and extending this network with the associate members. Then we include additional partners through Open Call, through the mobility scheme, through IDA, of course, with the help of the ICT-48 projects, extending our reach far beyond the core AI for Media partners. And as I just mentioned, many of these activities like IDA and other workshops, symposiums, and so on have been done in collaboration with the rest of the ICT-48 projects and for specific technology developments with AI for EU. And finally, as I mentioned, all these lead to the creation of a virtual center of excellence. So currently it is mostly our dissemination activities with a quite active website, social media accounts, newsletters, and so on. And I think the most important part so far is the availability of many video recordings in our YouTube channel, for example, including a number of workshops we organized on the technological aspects of the project. And before closing, just an overview of lessons learned so far from within from the AI for Media project activities. So there is a number of challenges. We face a number of challenges and we try to address as many of them as we can. First of all, regarding R&D activities. In some cases, many consider that all problems regarding AI research and development has been solved, and it's just an issue of how these are going to be implemented and adapted. But we are seeing that in many cases, like for example, these are just two examples, AI on the edge or content organization and reuse, there are still challenges, and we are working on them. Related challenges regard data, real-life data sets availability. For example, in our case, access to social platforms, there is a great inequality on how these social platforms can be accessed. For many researchers worldwide, they can use worldwide, only public APIs are available, but through specific collaboration, others have a much more complete access to the data, and this generates some issues. Of course, there are challenges regarding applications and industrialization of AI, as I mentioned in the presentation, to how to achieve understanding and integrating of AI within workflows and companies' life cycle. We have seen through the policy overview that we prepared that there are also many challenges there understanding all these various activities. Just being able to follow them is a challenge, and then of course implement them either in research or even more difficult in practical applications. And I guess this is widely well known, but we have seen it in our activities as well. Lack of talent generally in research, but also especially in media industry, specialized personnel which can enable, for example, what I mentioned, which can help in understanding and integrating AI is not always easy to find. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we have seen that, of course, for many reasons, but unfortunately, due to the misuse and manipulation of information, media remains a key and very relevant sector. And as I mentioned, in the recent years, at least three key societal values are threatened: democracy, public health, and peace. And when the project was prepared and when the project started, we had only democracy as such example, manipulation through elections, and it is also part of the project title. And in this, in just 18 months, or let's say in 2 years, we have seen another 2 important aspects being threatened: public health and very recently peace. And it is a highly complicated issue and challenge because it includes a number of aspects and dimensions. Of course, technology, but there are also societal aspects, including personal beliefs and psychology, educational ones, financial through advertisement, regulation, and legal aspects. And another 2 I would say key outcomes is that through IDA, we have seen that there is a strong interest in training activities. And I think that this is a positive one because it can contribute to the lack of talent challenge, and also to the uptake in applications, because we are seeing practitioners participating in IDA. And through the strong interest in the first open call, it has been obvious that there is a need for funding and support for new research and applications for AI and media. So thank you very much. I hope I was on time. And yes, this is the AI for Media consortium, which is trying to work on all these aspects that I have shown.
So thank you very much for this insight into the AI for Media project. We'll now move on to a short Q&A session. So I will ask you as a first question, are you planning to study bias in media? And which aspect of trustworthiness do you plan to look deeper into?
Yes, both bias and trustworthiness are part of AI for media activities. I would say especially bias because in multimedia and in many large data sets, there are aspects which are not well balanced. So we are trying to identify such problems and suggest solutions for more balanced data sets, or for algorithms which take into account such, let's say, properties within existing data sets. Regarding trustworthiness, we are examining a lot privacy-related aspects, especially when sharing content, or when receiving and consuming content, trying again to enable the users towards understanding whether they are, for example, within filter or news or content bubbles.
Thank you. The second question is, what are the main challenges in AI R&D and in media for AI?
Yes. As I mentioned, of course, there are, let's say, challenges regarding specific topics, specific existing, let's say, difficult research problems. But overall, I think especially for media, data availability, access open to data, of course, it is an issue common to many other directions, but I would say especially media where in order to gather and annotate media is not easy. And they contain also a lot of, for example, images and videos. They contain in some cases a lot of personal information. To have availability to such data which are suitable both, let's say, from the analysis side, but they do not have also any licensing issues. This is a significant challenge.
And I think we have time for one last quick question. What makes this information so complicated to address?
Yes. I have shown some directions around this. So it's not only technology to identify, for example, that it is already difficult, but even, for example, if an algorithm identifies that, let's say, a news item is manipulated or a news item is disinformation, this is not enough because it depends on a number of societal aspects, personal beliefs, educational background, and so on. And there are cases where, for example, even if a piece, a news item is identified as fake, then a strong believer, for a strong believer on this, let's say, fake opinion, this might be, let's say, might lead to even encouraging this and supporting this belief instead of reducing it, because they are, for example, considering this as an effort to persuade them and so on. And so this, for example, technology cannot help much on this. Of course, this is the first step, but educational activities can help towards this direction. And then we have the financial aspects and models on how online and social platforms work. So to make it simple, if the business and the profit model is to have as many clicks as possible, then of course there is a tendency to promote the unexpected, the exaggerating, let's say the strange news instead of, let's say, the more reasonable, which sometimes can be considered as boring. So as I mentioned, this is a difficult balance, how these platforms can remain profitable and independent, and on the same time not be part of this, let's say, click hunting war. And last, we have all this regulation and legal issues, which are very difficult to define and apply, because of course if we go too far, we have to face fundamental values like freedom of speech and freedom of expressing opinions. So again, a very difficult balance on how to define and apply such procedures.
Well, thank you very much for answering our questions and for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now go on to Professor Samuel Kaski, ELISE project coordinator. To Samuel Kaski is a professor of computer science at Aalto University, as well as a professor of artificial intelligence at the University of Manchester and research director of the Christabel Pankhurst Institute for Health Technology. He is also the director of the Finnish Center of Artificial Intelligence and the ELISE unit in Helsinki. He will now present the ELISE strategic research agenda. Samuel, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to present the ELISE network. Let me share my slide. Now I hope you can see it in the presentation mode. So why are we really here? I think we have two really big challenges to solve together. The first one is, for the first one, I'm afraid that we don't really need reminders nowadays. So several issues in health, security, climate change. For instance, this morning, I was very much feeling like wearing a yellow t-shirt with the blue jacket or even a yellow tie, but I don't own any, so all blue it then is. The other challenge is that the global competition is excessively tough, especially in AI. And of course, Europe will need to and want to do something about this. Solving these challenges requires obviously many things, but how AI can contribute is by offering better tools. But for that, we need excellent researchers, both AI researchers for creating the tools and researchers of many types and practitioners of many types in applying it, deploying them, and investments by companies and of course the countries. The key question for Europe then is, where will the excellent people, promising people, next generation, where will they want to build their careers and contribute to the local ecosystems? Is it Europe or elsewhere? So attractiveness is really the key issue that we should be considering. Regarding what kind of AI is needed and steps for Europe towards those types of AI solutions, ELISE has constructed ELISE strategic research agenda, which is available from the ELISE webpage. Comments are very much welcome. This is the first version of a live document. And it starts from three important elements which are needed. The first one being technical capabilities, the second improving deployment skills and deployment as such, and the third one aligning with social interests of many types. I will get back to this later in the presentation. How the ELISE network does this is together with the European Laboratory for Learning and Intelligent Systems, ELISE, which provides continuation of ELISE, which is one of these networks that has a fixed short-term duration, during which we, of course, aim to achieve many big things, but we want to and need to think further in the future. So the mission, joint mission of ELISE and ELISE is to make it possible to perform the best basic research in this field in Europe and through AI advancements also in other fields. Also to enable how AI changes, to shape how AI changes the world so that Europe would have a say in this. So Europe can then pitch in things that are important for the European vision of how the world should work. If we are not in that game, we don't have any say. And naturally, we also need to think of Europe specifically, impact jobs and so on. So how to do this? As we started with, everything depends on attractiveness for people and the companies. So excellence is attractive. Excellence in the sense of being able to do things which have competitive advantage. So that's not only existing excellence, but also, or even more importantly, future excellence. So strive for excellence with a good plan. But not obviously everybody wants to do the same thing. So it's not just excellence. Equally important is diversity for people, but for companies, obviously, who are all looking for their competitive advantage. So there are regional ecosystems, and each of these regional ecosystems will be attractive for certain kinds of solutions, and that would be the best place for developing those solutions. So an optimal arrangement could be where in each regional ecosystem there is leading AI research, leading the AI developments and driving the economy with those AI developments. And then linking these regional ecosystems and especially their AI centers together to be competitive also on the global level in the extremely tough competition. So this would be the elements of a distributed lighthouse or of excellence centers. And that kind of a network ELISE is, and I believe the other networks as well. So one of the transformations nobody can ignore at the moment is the machine learning revolution. So there are interesting scientific discussions ongoing about how to take it into account in different fields of AI and different application fields, different other fields. And of course, different opinions, as in scientific discussion, there should be, so that through this diversity, the new ideas are maximally productive. So there are different opinions, but no field can ignore this, that there has been a big revolution. So AI and especially machine learning have become a driving force of science. So if we look at the top scientific publication venues from Google Scholar, in top 12 venues, there are 2 leading machine learning conferences, 10 and 12 here. And if we look more closely at the usual suspect of where there are great papers, which would be the Nature journal, in the top 5 papers, there is one key machine learning paper by DeepMind people and another machine learning driven cancer medicine paper. If we then go to the top conference from the previous page, which was the Computer Vision and Pattern Recognition Conference, then actually all the top papers are essentially machine learning papers. So sometimes computer vision is driving machine learning, sometimes the other way around, but they are tightly integrated and there's tight interaction between these 2 fields. And the same holds for many other fields. If we look into natural language processing, very much the same situation. Robotics, there are, of course, several aspects to both natural language processing, including linguistics and robotics. There is also other things, but very few fields wouldn't benefit from this connection. So some are driving it, some are maybe lagging a bit behind, but will be taking a stance to this at some point. So now this can be a huge competitive advantage, or then it can be a competitor depends on how each of us wants to see it. But in any case, for Europe, it makes sense to take a productive stance on what can Europe do better now given this revolution. And now if we go back to the strategic research agenda, SRA, what kind of research is needed for these 3 purposes? Strengthening capabilities, improving deployment, aligning with societal interests. So we have identified 5 cross-cutting themes that connect the research of the ELISE consortium to wider scientific and social issues. There is security and privacy, explainable and transparent AI, trustworthiness and AI certification, AI integration across systems, and AI ethics and societal impact. So ELISE is running a set of research programs to advance these important cross-cutting themes and the European mission. So these research programs contribute to the cross-cutting themes, but they have been initiated bottom-up by the excellent researchers themselves through open calls. So outstanding and free basic research is really the key. That's the way to identify opportunities which would be really difficult to locate the best ones and the best approaches come from by purely top-down driven strategic thinking. There needs to be really this free basic research angle included, which I'm sure most people agree with. Additionally, the system that science uses is of course feedback for improvement by peer review. And that is heavily involved in selecting the proposals from the open calls. To make this concrete on both the diversity and sharpness of these programs, I will read them because some of them are white on a slightly light background. Apologies, they may not be readable. So from top left, there is geometric deep learning, robust machine learning, interactive learning and interventional representations, computer vision, robot learning, closing the reality gap, human-centric machine learning, theory, algorithms and computation of modern learning systems, quantum and physics-based machine learning, natural intelligence, health, earth and climate sciences, natural language processing, and symbolic machine learning. If I show a few examples of what the programs do, examples of workshops both on core issues of each program and more widely about important topics. In the top left, you can see molecule discovery. Then there is a joint doctoral symposium across these programs. There is causal and ethical AI, interactive learning, artificial scientific discovery, semantic, symbolic, and interpretable machine learning, and so on. Of course, the pandemic has cut down a bit on what has been possible, but on the other hand, it has been easier to arrange virtual workshops and seminars, as we all are too familiar also at this point. So what has happened so far in creating this interlinked set of local regional ecosystems around leading AI research? So the ELISE network consists of over 100 organizations that are contributing to the ELISE mission. And now with ELISE network, the ELISE now has 34 units. Newest are not in the map yet, which provide the continuity for the ELISE actions, as these ICT-48 networks are fixed term. So I believe many of the other centers which are contributing to ELISE will want to join as well. There are open calls regularly for units to join. So world's best science and research and development is driven by excellent machine learning, and ELISE sites. The question obviously then is that are ELISE sites these places? So is this how Europe can drive its mission? And of course, these will not be the only sites. There can be other ones which hopefully then will also consider joining the mission. If we look at CS rankings, one of the ways how institutes can be ranked in AI or CS more generally, but in this case AI, 15 out of 20 leading European institutions belong to ELISE. Now, obviously, all ranking indices are imperfect. We should not look at any single index such as this one. So let's look at another one, which would be the citation impact, obviously. So this is for ELISE fellows and scholars, it is the H index or it's the number of citations versus H index. So the figures are really impressive. I want to emphasize that this is not only senior professors, but including rising talent, which is equally important, if even not more important. So if we look at the lower end, the total citations may be lower, but the H index is correspondingly higher. So these are really impressive people. So why is this important? Not for bragging, and especially I don't think it is important. It helps in attractiveness at all to be bragging. But what is attractive is excellence in whatever is happening in those local nodes. So for both researchers who are thinking on where they would be building their careers and for industry. So the attractiveness is the key, and this is one of the factors that affects that. Working with industry is the main mode of operation at all levels, starting from the PhD program where there is an industry track, and many of the PhD students will be integrated in industry by internships, joint positions, and so on from the very beginning. Startups, SMEs, there's an impressive number launched by researchers of the network. So one for every two of the fellow scholars. Plus, the ELISE network is doing a special service for SMEs, which I will talk on more on in the next slide. So the network runs challenges with industry. Many of the people have double affiliations with industry. There is an advisory board and of the ELISE, of course, coming from industry, but also ELISE people are serving on advisory boards of many companies. The shared research labs with industry and a number of innovation hubs in these different nodes of this network. So here are a few examples. For instance, the UCL's digital innovation hubs is a really impressive, has some really impressive figures here. So one of the actions that we have done to support startups and small and medium-sized enterprises more generally, which may not have resources to run their own research centers, or at least not big enough to cover what they need to get done, is to run open calls for technology development with a scientific advisor which comes from the ELISE network or elsewhere. And this has been a massive success. We were able to start 32 of these projects out of altogether 400 applied. Maybe even more important is the next generation of researchers. So ELISE is running together with ELISE a PhD program to attract and educate, obviously, the next generation. An important element here is collaboration of different researchers by joint supervision. So each of these ELISE PhD students will spend some time in the other supervisor's laboratory, and many of them being in the industry. So here, attractiveness of excellence is particularly important to get the best applicants into Europe. And a brand formed by combining forces across excellent programs across Europe helps here. So the goal really here is to become the #1 brand in the world in machine learning. I want to emphasize that this program is not meant to replace any other action in Europe. This will complement and run on top of the programs that the universities are running and other organizations are running by offering one joint call and brand, which will then build critical mass and reputation. So everybody joining this will benefit from those. So the first cohort of ELISE PhD students has been recruited. The call was highly successful internationally, a really large number of applications across the world, different nationalities. This is really selective, also to build the reputation. And the hope, of course, is that many of the others who are excellent but who couldn't be chosen in these calls, they will anyway end up in Europe in the various programs that European universities are running. And we are seeking to facilitate that this would happen more often than not. And these students have begun their track on being supervised by 2 excellent supervisors. One important element, as I mentioned here, was mobility. So is students spending time in 2 different places, and then there is a mobility program to support that. There is a mobility program also for fellows and scholars of the network, meant to tighten this community so that it wouldn't matter so much where they do their research, in the sense that if there's a need to collaborate, then they can very fluently do that. Here is contact info to the ELISE network. And I thought to still mention a couple of important things that I didn't cover as separate items or slides. So one is that the network is open. ELISE is, and we have built a joint application mechanism with ELISE. So anybody is very welcome to apply to join the action through the ELISE calls. Second thing I thought to mention is that the researchers are by nature really collaboration seeking, mainly in the mode of science first, bottom up, as that is the best way, and that's really the way that the whole network has been designed to support. So the researchers know best what would be the best opportunity. Then there will be facilitatory actions to help them do those great ideas. And we have the mobility programs, for instance, for this, and industry collaboration. So one example, regarding the facilitatory actions, many of them are in between these 4 networks. So one example is that ELISE researchers gave 8 out of the 13 excellence lectures of the IDA Doctoral Academy or network that we heard of in 2021. And we are constantly seeking for ways on how to facilitate the collaboration, productive collaboration even further. That's it. Thanks a lot. I'm very glad to take some questions if there are any.
Well, thank you very much for this presentation of ELISE. And yes, we'll have a few questions for you. So the first one is, can you tell us more about the feedback from the companies that applied and succeeded in last year's Open ELISE call for innovators and SMEs?
So I mean, from the companies, okay, but we are guessing what that really means, but from the companies who already are running this or who applied?
I think who applied.
I think I have the luxury of having actually some people from the project office who may know more details, might be even able to pick up some examples. So I think Sami Heinesmäki and Katarina Sadakovic are here. Would either of you be able to give some details to this one?
Okay, yes. So I'm Sami Heinesmäki from Aalto. I can comment shortly that we are planning to systematically collect feedback from the companies who are running the projects right now. So they have just started in the beginning of this year. But as an example of their response to us has been that we, for example, organized a sort of ethical self-assessment procedure for the companies who were selected for funding. And the feedback from the companies from that was very positive, and we definitely plan to extend and continue that like service to in the future calls.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sami.
Yeah, thank you for those precisions. So the next question is, what could the EU do to advance European competitiveness even further?
Right. Yeah, many things. But if you are thinking of these networks in particular, these are, of course, mainly facilitatory actions. So even though it sounds like a big sum of money, but our network it's 200 key contributors in 100 sites. So of course this is really these networks are not for the actual research. These are for facilitating the building of the joint agenda and collaboration. And that, of course, we'd like to think that we are doing very effectively. But then the actual research also needs to be done. And now it would make sense for Europe to make big investments on this. And my pitch to that one would be that this interlinked ecosystem of interlinked local ecosystems to form a bigger network that functions seamlessly together. This sounds like a good way of combining the European competitive advantage of diversity with something that would be competitive also scale-wise on a global level.
All right, thank you. And another question is, there seem to be opportunities for synergy between the networks. Are there concrete actions to utilize it?
Right. There are several. Let me pick, and we are constantly looking for these. So the idea, of course, is all the time to look for opportunities on how to do things even better. And now an obvious opportunity is that we have these 4 networks. So we are just in a discussion, especially with the HumanE-AI-Net, on how we could combine the synergy of slightly different expertise across the 2 different networks. And there is discussion. I may be spoiling the news from Paul Lukowicz, who is talking next, but thinking of could we combine their initiatives of micro projects with our visitor programs. And that sounds like a really good opportunity.
Thank you for those interesting leads. And maybe just a question to bounce back on something that you said during your presentation. You mentioned that people could submit comments on your strategic research agenda. In the case they would like to do so, how can they proceed?
I hope we have on our webpage where the agenda can be downloaded that there is information. Let me check right after this meeting. So the problem, of course, always is that web page maintenance is a pain. But yeah, if that isn't there, it will be there real soon now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. We will let our audience know later. And thank you again for your presentation and for being here today.
Thanks a lot for running this.
Thank you. So we'll now go on to Professor Paul Lukowicz, HumanE-AI-Net project coordinator. So since 2012, Paul Lukowicz is a full professor of AI at TU Kaiserslautern in Germany and scientific director heading the Embedded Intelligence Group at DFKI, the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence. He will now present the vision of his project for a human-centric AI. Paul, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. So let me just try to share my screen. And I also want to share the sound. Okay, that should work now.
Yes, okay. It's working. Perfect.
So can you see now my screen or just the presenter's view?
Yes, we can see it. Yeah, that's good.
Take it the right one. Okay, so welcome.
We seem to have an issue with the sound. Yes,
now it's
perfect.
Okay?
Yes, yeah. It's perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. I want to start by showing you our, let's say, promotional movie that some of you may know, but I think it gets us into the spirit of what we want to achieve with our network. So let me just start it. Can you hear the sound?
A technology revolution has led us to a crossroads. With HumanE-AI-Net, we will guide Europe towards a better future, this new era. For humanity with AI from Europe. The potential of artificial intelligence is massive, Imagine businesses and factories prospering and being profitable while providing their employees good working hours, healthcare, equality, and the best benefits of a working life. HumanE-AI-Net is about technology that will help Europe achieve this vision and sustain it in a competitive, globalized world. For people, for the planet, and for prosperity.
What we really need to do is think about AI as a way of empowering human beings, making human beings better.
A brighter future requires science. In HumanE-AI-Net, we are working on science and innovations for humans. We will work to create AI that respects human autonomy, AI that is fair, transparent, and within the rule of law. AI that increases our abilities as workers, our insight as decision makers, our enjoyment as customers, and our well-being as individuals. AI that helps strengthen our democracy and assure a better society for all. From Turkey to Ireland, from Portugal to the Scandinavian north, within HumanE-AI-Net, researchers, innovators and practitioners join forces to leverage the AI revolution, to strengthen the European economy and society, and to empower all people across Europe. With the concept of micro-projects, we combine the benefits of a pan-European network with the research in small agile groups to provide tangible results that will drive European research and innovation. With the AI revolution in full swing, key industrial players are already engaged in HumanE-AI-Net to build an innovation ecosystem where all companies, from small to big, can grow.
What would be my dream is to really change the future to something we all want to live in.
Of course, that is like a glitzy video, but it illustrates one point which is important to us, that being a facilitation action, as Semi nicely put it, reaching out to the public is one of the things that is important to us. In terms of our research direction, of course, like all the other networks, we look at trustworthy, human-centric European AI. But the three very specific things that differentiate us are the fact that we look at AI that enhances human capabilities, right? So not as much as building systems that can do what humans can do, but building systems that can empower humans to do more. We consider the collective aspect of AI. What happens when you have complex systems with machines and human interacting? And how can you model it? So sort of an interface to social science and complexity science. And we have very strong embedding of ethical and legal research. So that's sort of like the main pillars of our research agenda. Then, of course, to do that, we bring together a unique community, which consists of top AI researchers, but also of people of human-computer interaction, science, and law, and all of them being embedded together in a project where they work together. To facilitate that, we have a unique micro-project collaboration concept that also seamlessly embeds innovation. And what I'd like to do in the next, say, 20 minutes is just to walk you through those points to show you what we do in the project, starting with this notion of enhancing human capabilities. And let me start by showing, this is a nice citation from Pablo Picasso, who was not a very technology-friendly person, but he had a point, right? Computers are useless because they can only give you answers. And I think it touches on many problems of today's AI, is that when you have these black boxes where you can put a question and you get an authoritative answer that tells you what it is, but doesn't really help you to yourself arrive at an answer, right? And a lot of the ethical problems of today's AI, trustworthiness, explainability, bias, result from this. So what we envision as human-centric AI, as an AI that doesn't just give you answers to questions that you have to pose in a very strict way, but helps you ask the right questions, help you find your own answers, and help you do things yourself that you would not be able to do without AI. And the vision that we like to put there is this sort of a cognitive exoskeleton. And some people don't like this exoskeleton vision because it makes sort of look like a robot. But I think it's a very nice concept, because if you use, say, a crane to lift something heavy, it's not you who is lifting. You're operating something that is strange to your nature. If you use a robot to do it, it's not you doing it. If you use an exoskeleton, you do what you would do as a human naturally, and the system just makes it stronger and better. And that is the way we envision AI, as a cognitive exoskeleton, helping people do things that they would do in the way they want to do it, with just more power, doing it better. Now, when you look at it, then you can do a lot, right? Things like, you don't want AI that replaces human jobs. You want job upskilling, where people can do things they could not do without AI. You want people educated, and AI can help us educate people better. You want to optimize your personal lifestyle, but do what you want to do. And of course, AI is already changing science. We had some of this discussion by Sammy before that. And we do have even AI in creative areas, where it's not about those highly publicized applications where computer does something instead of humans, but rather where computer empower people in creative professions to be even more creative. Now, in this context, it's really interesting to look at some of those notions that we have in general in conjunction with AI, like trustworthiness. And if you look at an example of whom people trust, then you see strange things, because it's not really rational, right? People trust nurses more than they trust engineers. Now, is that because engineers are less reliable than nurses? No, it has to do with soft factors. So when we talk about trustworthy AI in a traditional way, it's very much about this engineering trustworthiness, about systems for which you trust that they will work as specified, which is important. But it's not enough for humans to trust them. There are soft trust factors, and that is something that is a specific way we look at trustworthiness in AI, is by embedding HCI research and building systems that are not just reliable, but systems which people feel comfortable trusting. So this synergy between AI and HCI is one of the key things that we consider to be important for human-centric AI in the future, and which we work on in our research agenda. Now, second thing is the social, individual, and society aspect. One is, of course, the social implications of AI, but it's really more. And let's give you an old example. I like to give my talks. It's like a decade old. And a decade ago, Microsoft patented what they call the bad neighborhood detection. The idea was that you do the standard application. When you look at archival data about areas, you have sensor-enabled interactive devices, and you use them to plan routes for people who want to go for a walk in a city, not just as a pure navigation in terms of a shortest route, but in terms of finding routes where people feel comfortable walking, which involves where they may not be afraid of crime, neighborhoods that they like. Seems like a nice AI application, but that justly started a shitstorm on the net, because people said, really? You are going to get an app that will essentially stigmatize neighborhoods by having this self-enforcing effect where people will start avoiding neighborhood, and the more people avoid neighborhoods, the more the neighborhood can reward. And you would have this feedback. And the interesting thing is that you have here an application that works perfectly on individual level, right? It really provides you the service that you need. But the collective network effect has a socially negative effect. And that's something that's really important to consider when you look at AI today, and that's what we consider is, it's not just AI. It's this triangle of AI, big data, social data, but also interactive technologies, where AI influences people, people produce data, the data changes AI, and we have this feedback loop that essentially encompasses our entire society. And that today is driven a lot by all of those intelligent assistants, right? We talk a lot about search engines and monopolies of search engines, but that's like old, irrelevant technology. Those assistants already do and will influence the way we shop, we travel, we change, we control our homes and everything. Now, a lot of people are sort of afraid of them because of privacy. I don't think that that is that much of a problem. A lot of people look at this Terminator-like vision where people are afraid their AI become conscious and control everything. But I personally considered to be largely nonsense looking at today's technology. But like a lot of things, it has a grain of truth. And that truth comes from complexity and chaos theory. Once you have millions or billions of individual intelligent devices working as black boxes, influencing humans, moderating interactions between humans, you run into a place where suddenly things may happen that nobody wanted, but which may still be bad. And you've seen those things, like some power breakdowns where suddenly some sort of an automated control system of the power system or traffic system creates complexity and network effects that nobody foresees. So in reality, if you look at it, the danger is not artificial intelligence, but it's artificial stupidity, because we have been looking at AI only from the point of view of individual devices and forgot to see the social aspect in terms of network interaction in large-scale system. And that is what you really look at in HumanE-AI-Net. So essentially, it's a notion that a crowd of individually intelligent people or devices is not an intelligent crowd. On the contrary. And you see that, I think Yiannis was talking about media effect, and of course you see that in the media, all those polarization effects are things that have to do with intelligent filters interacting in network, in collective effects, which you do not really want to see. Optimal choices for individuals that AI may make are non-optimal for us as a society. So that is something that is an important aspect of our research network, that we bring together AI understanding, but look at it also from that collective aspect, not just social science, but social science and complexity science and network effects. Finally, the third part of our pillar of our agenda is ethical fundamental rights and protection by design. And that goes back, of course, to our intelligent assistant things. And what we really have to ask ourselves, if those intelligence devices in this sort of a control loop are really influencing our lives that much, whose interests are they representing? What values do they represent? And that, of course, is the mission of the networks and of our project, is to make sure that the AI that is so intimately influencing our everyday lives is something that adheres to European values and, of course, has value for European society. The general prospect is then you will really look at the entire AI development systems, that development process has to be grounded in law and ethics and has to be looked at from the point of view of its impact on the society, and has to be considered from an interdisciplinary, multi-stakeholder perspective. Now, the important thing is that very often when we talk about things like that, people think we're going to constrain research, and we see that requirement, that vision, as a scientific and technological challenge, right? You can state this notion of adhering to European values as a political goal, which is right to do, but at the end of the day, it is a scientific challenge to build those systems, and something that makes actually the scientific work much more interesting, because some things that you could do more simply without looking at this dimension become harder. But once you solve them, you have a competitive edge and an advantage for the European industry. So really it's about the science and technology that ensures that AI systems operate in a way that's compatible with our values, that is based on appropriate verification, and is based on fundamental rights impact assessment, and is focused on trustworthy interaction with humans. And really, again, to stress, it's really important, and we engage in political discourse, but there is a really, really interesting scientific questions there. As I said, we engage a lot in community and social outreach. So the project has organized a lot of events that has been done online, but also physically, tutorials on legal aspects, discussion about impact of regulation. Members of the project has been publishing books and articles about the problem. So we really are trying to have an impact on society as a whole with respect to that aspect. This is again only possible if you bring together a community that is right. And we're really very proud to represent a big community. And the interesting thing there is our community has a history. So yes, we are a HumanE-AI-Net, one of the ICT-48 projects, but the community itself goes back about a decade to the initial call for EU flagships. So it was a future ICT flagship that became a flagship candidate. Later, the HumanE-AI, it was then called not HumanE-AI-Net, but HumanE-AI was one of the flagship candidates in the last Fed flagship call that did not proceed beyond the candidate. So we really have been able over a decade to assemble a community that really brings all the important competences to make that vision of human-centric AI, where the AI enhances human capabilities, a reality. And the ICT-48 Collab is an excellent vehicle to bring that forward. In our consortium, you have very different communities where are represented, different AI communities, HCI community, big data community, different organizations, and we are very active in various bodies that actually advise the Commission on ethical and trustworthy AI. The project itself is organized around the societal and ethical impacts in essentially 3 research work packages dealing with core learning questions, with perception, which is very important if you talk about systems that should enhance human capability, and HCI, and work packages that deal with spreading the excellence, involving the community, involving the society, and on innovation. And they are led by people who are deeply rooted in the respective communities and have a long-standing history of working in this direction. So I think this project really grows about its community. And again, I would like to stress that our vision is to have essentially HCI, social science, cognitive science, law, ethics, not as a post-processing step, but something that is fundamentally embedded in the structure of our project. So one of the things that we have to make this unique community, very diverse community work together is our micro-project collaboration concept. And as has already been mentioned, one of the things is that given although each of the project has been given a lot of money, given the huge size of a network, it's sort of very strongly tilted toward, as Sami said, facilitation network. But we still wanted to ensure that we do some meaningful research between the involved partners, because I think, and as my predecessors here speaking has said, the real value of collaboration, of networking, is just not just sitting together and talking, but when you get bright young researchers from different places, from different backgrounds, to get together and actually work on a paper, work on a data set, work on a tool set, that actually is where you get the benefit. That is where in the long term you build European excellence. And that is where we sort of came with this micro project idea. So the idea was that we spent a large part of the money in the project by having 2 or more HumanE-AI partners work together for a very short period of time on a very specific tangible result, which on one hand is an important scientific problem, but then produces a tangible outcome that can be of a benefit to the community. And we agreed that we made available through AI4EU, AI for Europe platform. And we have a peer review process, just like ELISE does, but it's also a very short process through which we select those projects. And that has been something that's been extremely successful. So what you can see here is our collaboration network, where every node is an organization, and every link here in the graph represents 2 organizations working together in a micro project. And the interesting thing is that was able also to mobilize resources beyond the actual funding of the project, as in many cases, partners actually take part, and external partners sometimes take part in micro projects, because the topic and the ability to collaborate with others has been so interesting. Here are examples of micro projects where you can see things that are more rooted in the core learning and reasoning part. You have micro projects that are more rooted in the area of perception, including, for example, creating data sets, but looking at things like causality, transformers, new technologies. You have a lot of projects at the interface between HCI and machine learning. And if you look at the partners involved here, that you actually see that really is where the benefit comes from. We have a lot of projects also in the social computing and also in the area of societal impact and ethics. What is actually really interesting, for example, here's one micro project where we have ING, which is a banking consortium working together with our ethics, the Virginia Dignams group, actually at looking at fairness. So it's really a very powerful instrument for creating a lot of research with relatively small amount of funds. And of course, for us, the micro projects are also the instrument which we use to engage external partners. So we decided against the classical open calls, which involves a lot of overhead and tends to create larger projects. Instead, the idea is that we have that a process we started actually now, partners can apply for micro projects, which involve micro project collaboration from outside the project, who will be funded for travel. So similar to the ELISE mobility program. And that way, we hope that given the funds that we have over the course of the project, we will be able to engage hundreds of external partners. And the nice thing about the concept is that because it really is about participation of individual researchers in this small focus and scientific result-oriented collaborations, it's not just talented people who work at large organizations who have the know-how to apply for open calls, but even PhD students at some remote university who are talented but may not have a large organization in the background can apply. And we can always make sure that we get the best people for the specific project across Europe to participate. And one thing which Sami also mentioned, we have now managed to reach a formal agreement with ELISE. So both within HumanE-AI-Net and ELISE, it has been approved that we'll sort of do a joint call that involves our micro projects and the mobility program for people, for small projects, where part of it will be financed through our micro project concept, a part of it will be financed through the mobility program, and we will bring together the expertise from ELISE with our expertise. And we are now working on actually formulating the call to have a scientific topic that really fits that collaboration. So finally, I would like to come to our last point, to the notion of embedding of innovation, which is really important to us. We have essentially two pillars in that. One is involving big European champions in different areas. The other one is a complex and very elaborate organization of an innovation ecosystem. The main vehicle for embedding and engaging the champions is getting them into the micro projects. That's another really, really powerful result of the micro projects, where you have people from industrial labs working together with top basic researchers from Europe. And of course, researchers coming to industrial labs and engaging and creating synergies. In terms of the ecosystem, it's being driven by a German interpretership, which is actually a consultancy that specializes on creating synergies between universities and the industry, and the LMU Munich, and essentially Munich in general, innovation hub. It's organizing a lot of different events. So we have organized an AI idea prize for students, to get students really to come up with ideas and pitch them like they would pitch a startup company. We have organized events for AI best practice and digitization with small and medium-sized enterprises, which is an important aspect. We have been involved in many different other things, like the Cashwalk, which is a European large-scale startup event, in which we actually had a HumanE-AI award prize to ensure that we connect those people from our consortium and our vision. And we are planning a host of other events in the next years, going in the same direction, bringing together different actors of the ecosystem. And one thing that we really strongly believe in, it really is about excellence of individual people. Some of them are excellent in science, but some of them are people who are excellent innovators. And we really want to make sure that the students and PhD students and postdocs and young people who are involved in AI research get the opportunity, get the motivation to actually become innovators, and they get the support that they need to do it successfully. We've also reached out to the scientific community. We have organized the ACAI advanced course on human-centered AI in summer in Berlin, one of the very rare in-person presence events that we have organized. That is now being turned into lecture notes on artificial intelligence, which will be a course on human-centric AI. We have for summer schedule a Schloss Dachstuhl seminar. Hopefully it will take place. We have a virtual laboratory run by Fraunhofer, which is closely collaborating with the AI for Europe platform and AI for Experiments. And we are organizing hosts of events that you can find in terms of videos. So that's the advantage of having all those Zoom and virtual events that you can record them and show them for people. We are closely collaborating with the next generation AI for EU platform. You can find actually the results of, I think, by now more than half of our micro project as research bundles on the AI for EU platform. And of course, all the videos of events are being published through typical social media channels. But I have to mention, we also use the project as a leverage to which we try to connect to local initiative. The most notable is the WASP initiative in Sweden, which is a huge 500 million euro initiative where Virginia Dignum, who is the co-coordinator of our project, is also driving it. There is the Hybrid Intelligence Center driven by Frank Verhammelen. And there is the Italian National Initiative driven by Dino, both of them key players in our project. Recently, we got a not that big, but really, really prestigious called SAIS Sustainable Embedded AI project here at DFKI with 5 million. So seeing really, as our reviewers told that we leverage what we get from the network to mobilize more funds toward our vision. And with that, I would like to come to the end. And again, we are a network. And yes, the strength of our network are the people we have in the network from very different backgrounds who work together within micro project on really interesting scientific projects. There are many of them, actually all of them at this stage, bottom-up driven, and the different organizations will engage. And we really, really welcome everybody else who wants to get engaged. Again, we started collaboration with ELISE. We are also working quite closely with TAILOR. We are involved in IDA, and we invite very, very strongly people from outside the consortium to get engaged with our micro-project concept. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for your presentation of the HumanE-AI-Net project. We'll now go on to the Q&A session. And actually, the first question was specifically about the micro project. And you've pretty much already answered the question in your presentation, but maybe just for the sake of clarity, so everyone hears the answer, I'll still ask the question.
Yes.
So the question was, where does the idea of micro projects come from? And are these projects open also to individuals or companies outside of your network? So maybe you can say also how they can.
So the idea is actually something that we came up with even before the actual proposal of HumanE-AI-Net. As I told you, we came from this Future and Emerging Technology flagship candidate. And one of the tasks of that flagship then was really to come up with concepts for large-scale research in Europe on AI. And then we were writing the HumanE-AI-Net proposal. There was this question, how can you actually make sure that with a huge number of partners and a limited number of funds, we can still fund something that is a real, tangible good research. And that's how we came up with this idea of micro-project. And with respect to the external partners, so we have sort of like in the first year focus of internal micro-project. We have now started the phase when we want to engage external partners. And we will actually be publishing ways to externally apply for being parts of micro-project and ideas on our website. The important thing is, very much like the mobility program, what we give in terms of funding for the external partners is explicitly travel funds. So we essentially provide funds for people from other organizations to travel. And travel implies not just flight, but actually spending a month at the lab of one of our partners as part of a micro project, and also getting subsistence, also daily allowances and accommodation and everything that you need to be part of a micro project. And typically it's like a bidirectional process. So on one hand, internally, we will have partners proposing micro project, and they're trying to figure out who would be the best person outside the consortium to be part of a micro project. But of course, we will have a mechanism on our webpage through which external people come up with ideas and say, we would like to collaborate with you on this and that. And this thing is evolving now. One of the problems really is that the micro project were aimed at travel. And as we all know, travel was not necessarily so easy in the last year. So we hope that that is something that is about to change.
Indeed. So the next question is a bit broader. So it's, how can we educate the greater society to ensure it has enough basic knowledge about AI?
So I think that is something that, again, as much as many of you see us as the things that we like to do most, which is actually doing research, and it's very important to reach out to the society and really try to explain to people what is AI. So in our network, we have, that is one of the things that we do by publishing videos. But I personally, for example, do a lot of talks outside, let's say, the core AI or computer science community, trying to demystify AI, telling people, you know, there's these wonderful things that you can do AI, but it's not magic. It's not machines that start thinking, behaving like humans. It is mathematics and computer science and algorithms, which are really useful. But yes, what I can say is that is something also which I feel the Commission should be supporting even more. It's because it is really important that people understand that AI is not this big murky thing that can either threaten or replace you, but it's a technology based on simple mathematics and technology that offers huge potential to really, really help us do things we cannot do without this technology, both as individuals and as society. And what is important, like any technology, it will only help us if we use it and apply it in a responsible, ethical way. And that is something that, of course, we need to think about.
Thank you. And then the last question, how can we avoid the black box effect of AI?
So as I try to explain in my talk, there are many approaches to it. There are a lot of people from machine learning working on explainability. I think a key trend that you now see in AI is combining, let's say, machine learning approaches with more traditional symbolic AI approaches. So, you know, things like language models that are world models that are combined with data-based based learning. As far as our project is concerned, we feel that really focusing on application when you do not replace humans with AI, but actually you think, how can an AI system enhance human problem-solving process is the way to go. So it's not the black box that decides something from you, but it's rather the systems that engages in a productive discussion with you. So really the thing of involving HCI, cognitive science, in designing AI system is really, really important.
Well, thank you very much for these interesting insights and for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. So we'll now go on to the last presentation by Janina Hoppstadter and Freek Bomhof. Janina has been working for 3 years at DFKI, the German Research Center of Artificial Intelligence, on the conception and implementation of theme development workshops, as well as other industry-related activities. Freek joined the Dutch research organization, TNO, in 2003, and has had several positions there in various application domains, having worked on redesigning business processes for large organizations and innovation management, primarily for SMEs. Both Freek and Janina are also currently involved in TAILOR. So Janina will now give an overview of this project, and Freek will then focus on the theme development workshops organized through this project. The floor is yours, Janina.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marianne. In our presentation, like you said, we would like to give you an overview about the theme development workshops in TAILOR, the key findings of the already realized ones, and an overview about the roadmap taxonomy. Maybe we can go over then to the next slide, and maybe a few words about TAILOR in general. TAILOR is one of the 4 networks of excellence, and the goal is here to actively bringing together communities, especially in reasoning and learning, in an academic industrial network with the vision and capability of developing the scientific foundations for realizing the European vision of human-centered, trustworthy AI. And then maybe, the next slide. Thank you very much, Freek. Sorry, my screen now. Okay, as I said before, we focus on the theme development workshops, which are in work package 8, the Industry Innovation and Transfer Program. And the objective of this work package is to strengthen academia-industry collaboration. And to do this, we have several objectives here in blue and innovative formats we are pursuing. One of the objectives is to give input to the TAILOR roadmap and the other work packages. And especially here, we are focusing on the long-term strategic challenges, which are provided via the roadmap and input to this work packages. And then we would like to generate ideas for use cases and showcases in TAILOR. For this, we have planned formats like hackathons, challenges, and showcases. Showcase, for example, for trade fairs and so on. And the challenges, there we are specifically looking for those that are connected, for example, to industrial requirements and needs. And then furthermore, we are working on ideas for industrial academic co-innovation or transfer labs, how we call it in TAILOR. There we would also like to provide internships together with industry. And then we have a joint PhD and postdoc program. And especially these co-innovation or transfer labs are more focused on longer-term strategic partnerships between academic partners and industrial partners, working together on more long-term research-oriented topics. And then, last but not least, we would like to enforce the networking within and beyond the TAILOR networks of excellence. So, for example, there we are focusing on publications. Then we have specifically in TAILOR the so-called Connectivity Fund, where researchers from outside the TAILOR consortium can visit a TAILOR partner for a few weeks or months. And obviously, we would like to use the opportunity here to generate ideas and topics for new projects. And as a starting point or as an initial innovative format or activity to support all this, we have the so-called theme development workshops, which will be explained in a moment. And then in TAILOR, right, next slide, we focus on specific industry sectors, which you can see now on the slide, 6 in total. It's the IT software and services, for example, the public sector, healthcare, energy, and so on. And each of these sectors are represented by at least one partner who acts as a multiplier for the sector and jointly develops activities for the sector with us, especially theme development workshops are one mechanism here. And then next slide again. And then here now the theme development workshops in general, the goal is here to bring together sector experts with researchers and AI experts, as well as other stakeholders like political people, initiatives, and so on. But all of them are experts either in AI or in the specific sector. With this combination, we have a multidisciplinary approach and can discuss the topic from various perspectives. And then we have 3 main objectives that we want, sorry, that we want to achieve as an outcome from the theme development workshops, first of all, and why it's called a theme development workshop. It's really about jointly developing and identifying the most promising and or emerging AI topics in this industry sector. This is what the theme development workshop is about. And furthermore, on the one hand, we would like to generate input for the European AI research and innovation roadmap, which are more the long-term strategic topics. And on the other hand, we would also like to identify ideas for follow-up activities, the more mid and short-term activities and topics. And to achieve this goals, the workshop program consists of short and motivating keynotes on current topics in the sector, followed by the parallel breakout sessions, where the people with various backgrounds sit together and discuss openly about a specific subtopic. And for the success of such a workshop, it's especially in the breakout sessions, it is therefore of particular importance to select and bring together the right participants with the wide backgrounds and the experiences. And then next slide, please. In September last year, we started with the first one, the AI in the public sector. There are 56 people with different backgrounds from a total of 12 countries participated. And in the breakout sessions, you can see a few topics here. We are able to cover many relevant and interesting topics, such as the urban mobility, the reliable statistics, public trust in AI, and so on. And the overall positive participation here was also visible in the following two workshops on the mobility and transportation sector and the healthcare sector. You see it's 167 participants and the other one has the same number of 56 participants. And I think, there we find topics like time series data analysis, AI in infodemics, federated learning approaches, and a lot of more of that interesting topics. And the next one is, and the third workshop will be for now the smart industry sector. This was published last week, so it's really new, and it will take place online via Zoom on the 10th of May. And the application phase is now open until end of next week, the 25th of March. And there we would be delighted to welcome you, many of you as possible. And you can find more information about the workshop, the application, and everything around that on the TAILOR site. You also can find the final reports of the other workshops on the TAILOR website. And if there were any questions, you can write us an email or contact us then at any time. Yeah, that's in general for the theme development workshops now. And I'm happy to give the floor to my colleague Freek, who will present the main findings of the workshops held so far. And then, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Janina, for this excellent introduction into the project. And we lifted one specific interesting set of activities from the TAILOR project, and that is these theme development workshops. And a little bit of a warning, it is 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, so your heads are probably already full with lots of information. And I will try to top it off with even more information, because these theme development workshops have really been data generating activities. There are so many good things brought to the table. It was very hard to make a good selection of those topics. I will try to summarize all of the things that we found in those theme development workshops, but it's inevitable that I cannot address everything. I will be very quick in some places. So it's good for you to know that these slides will be made available after this presentation. And as Janina said, you can download the final reports of the theme development workshop on the TAILOR website as well. So this is just to give you a flavor of what we did. And later on, I'll try to bring some structure into the things that we found. Okay, let's dive into the first one, and that is on the public sector. We had a couple of very interesting keynote topics addressing AI in local government, but also governmental AI from an industry perspective, specifically focusing on trustworthy AI in government, but also what type of applications you can have in the public sector. And then we had 2 sets of breakout sessions, horizontal topics and vertical topics. The vertical topics are application domains. You can see it here: public safety and security, urban mobility, reliable statistics. And on the second day, we had more cross-cutting themes like statistics of AI usage, transparency, but also systemic effects of AI effects. So some takeaways. The keynotes addressed urban labs, which could serve a very important role in experimenting with AI and finding out how citizens react to applications and what is possible, what is not possible, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. Then we also come, of course, to legal barriers and regulatory requirements, which are, of course, obviously a very important part, specifically if you talk about AI in the public sector. I mean, it's one thing that a company is using AI in a slightly misled way, but it's much worse if your democratically elected government is using AI in the wrong way. So civil servants are feeling this responsibility much more even. Then, of course, there's administrative and constitutional law, where a number of mechanisms are very important there. And finally, and I think this is one of the most important things brought to the table, to improve the understanding of the impacts of AI. We will change our society, but we don't know exactly how. And that is quite important. So some takeaways. Well, one very interesting observation is that the most powerful AI tools can also cause most of the harm. So that's a fundamental tension. And yeah, for instance, interaction between developers and civil servants are very important to better understand that tension. Of course, quality and reliability, transparency. I think this word popped up in almost every breakout session that we had, even those that were not addressing transparency as a topic. Well, there were many more things here as well, but I will skip over them very quickly because we have more content to look at. For instance, about transparency, which is quite difficult to define precisely. And what was seen also here is that the audience is very relevant here. To whom should you provide transparency, and also in what way? In the previous presentation, there was a question on black box AI. I think that for a developer, black box AI could be okay, but for an end user or for a citizen, black box AI would be something really that is not useful at all. So it really depends on the audience. What I just said is measurements of systemic effects of government funding that are changing as a result of AI is very important. Another topic that was constantly brought to the table, and that is that a knowledge transfer between the public and private sector is really needed. It's really needed that civil servants have a basic understanding of what AI can do and what it cannot do. Some sector-specific key results. These are the topics that go into the TAILOR roadmap that we are working on right now. Education is one of the key things that needs more attention. Education of civil servants, but also education of all of the citizens. Measuring performance, I already noted it. Another thing that was brought to the table was algorithm registers, which provide also a way to provide transparency. Where are we using algorithms, where not? Of course, government has an important role for market creation. And we think that there is a transformation of the public sector, the role that the public sector is playing. Of course, there's also a number of key results, and nobody will be surprised that data is an issue and that requirements can always be defined in a better way. And an interesting one, that life cycle management should include all phases, and usually procurement pays a lot of attention to requirements and costs and effects, etc. But while a system is being used, it's equally important, and also you need to address the conditions at the end of the life cycle, when to stop using a system. Okay, so that was very quickly on the public sector. I will move on quickly with AI for future healthcare, because I think that in many cases, we all know examples of applications of AI there. Also here, we have had keynote introductions on AI applications, on the role of supercomputing, also from the viewpoint of medical equipment, and also the management of healthcare systems. And we had quite a lot of session topics, breakout sessions. And I'd like to highlight, for instance, one, AI in infodemics. Everybody will have seen that when COVID-19 struck the world, the number of scientific articles there was exploding, and you really needed AI to keep track of all of these publications. So infodemics is something that we all experience, but the healthcare sector made it clear that they are specifically suffering from that. So you could also use AI to beat that. You will, in the meantime, have read the other breakout session topics in the meantime, and I think there are no real surprises here. That federated learning is interesting here, that HPC plays a role, trustworthy AI is also important here, obviously. So I will go to the main takeaways. I think that we still are having trouble to grasp the concept of trustworthy AI. It's still a topic that needs to be elaborated and to be better understood, not only by academics, but also by end users. When do they really consider a system as trustworthy and when not? I will skip the data part because it's obvious to many of you, I think. what is also put on the table, especially here, is that we need interdisciplinary AI researchers, and we need them in Europe. So these are two difficult things: interdisciplinary and AI researchers, and both are scarce to achieve. So that is really something, and I've seen the other presentations in this session as well address this. I think this is also a very important one. Skipping over the last one just because of time, some key findings here. Ownership of health data. That is, I would almost say, traditionally a thing that is quite hotly debated, because medical data is the most sensitive of personal data that you can have. So privacy by design governance guidance here is really needed. And many people are complaining that the GDPR is unintentionally, but it is hindering medical research in many cases. So availability of public data sets, that's another topic that's extremely important here. Yes, of course, there's a number of other things related to legal questions here. Explainability plays a special role, because the end user is only interested in does it work or not, while at the same time the professionals may still need and want and request some underpinnings for the advice that the system gives. So this is also an indication that the audience for explainability and transparency is very important. Moving on quickly, I'm just picking out a number of things here. There were also findings that are not specific to the healthcare sector. Of course, explainability and trustworthiness are closely interlinked. They influence one another. And another topic also linked to that is that competency courses, basic competency courses at secondary education level will make it easier for students to actually take AI courses at university. So the education is not only about civil servants or healthcare professionals. It should start earlier if we want to reach this objective of interdisciplinary AI researchers in Europe. Moving on quickly to the third theme development workshop that I'm going to summarize right now, that is future mobility. There were breakout sessions on, well, a number of things, of course, future mobility itself as a topic, but they addressed quite a number of AI core things here, like time series analysis, the value of data, standardization, confidence measures, also machine learning in the context of GDPR. These are all familiar topics that are not specific for future mobility. Here also a number of observations were made. Trustworthy AI is very interdisciplinary. It's not only technical, it also should involve the social sciences. Also the validation and verification of AI systems. This is also a very complex thing, especially when the systems themselves become more complicated and also become adaptive. Then it's really a challenge to stay certain on the performance of a system. Some sector-specific results. I think that what is repeated here, and we've heard it before, is that trustworthy AI should really receive a holistic consideration, because it is not just one or two things. It is multidisciplinary, as was said on the previous slide, but it also needs to be addressed jointly. So a psychological topic is influenced by a technological decision, and this technological decision was made because of a business requirement. So these are all interlinked, and we should understand this much better. An interesting one is that the educational part is that AI applications and autonomous driving. I can imagine that this is about the drivers themselves who need to work with the AI applications, but also the other way around, how AI applications should behave in the context of autonomous driving. I think this is one of the most visible places where the behavior of AI systems become apparent in everyday life. I think the trolley problem itself is also something that is not by coincidence related to mobility. For those of you who do not know what the problem is, it is about trains and dangerous situations. So that is really also mobility, of course. I would quickly move on because of time. And that is the last topic that I would like to bring to the table. We started this session this afternoon with an introduction by Holger of the VISION project. And I'm also now finalizing a little bit from the view of the VISION project, because you may have wondered all these topics that are brought to the table. And rest assured, these topics were summaries of summaries of summaries. We had breakout sessions, they were summarized by people, and those summaries were summarized again. And I have just summarized these slides to you. So it's a summary of a summary of a summary, and there are so many topics underneath. So how can you ever start to even understand how they relate and what's in there? Well, a well-tested approach to that is creating a taxonomy. It's a concept coming from biology, where scientists in the 16th century started to categorize all of the species that they found in a hierarchical way. And this enabled them to grasp nature and to describe it in a better way. So we have now, from the VISION project, we've said, let's see whether we can create a taxonomy of everything that is related to trustworthy AI. Because if we looked at roadmaps that were already there, we found many common elements. And if we are to create a new roadmaps from the individual networks of excellence projects and the overarching VISION project, if we are to create a roadmap there, it makes sense to use the same common language there. So as a first test, and this is going on as we speak, and that is that we take the TAILOR roadmap, we take also the outcomes of the theme development workshops, and we will plot them on this taxonomy that we created in the first version to test whether it is appropriate, whether it is complete, whether it is also understandable. I should stress here that a taxonomy is not the same as a roadmap. How the roadmap will look like, what function it will have, how many roadmaps there will be, that is open. That this is still a very hot and interesting debate between the next networks of excellence. What we are just proposing here is to a kind of a common language in which we can express the roadmap. Okay, let's dive into this. We looked at a number of existing roadmaps, plans, and also the ones outside our own area. So we started here with the networks of excellence, their plans and the topics that they created. We then looked in the roadmaps that are created by a number of organizations that all are addressing AI. And we compared it also to the roadmaps that are created by an even wider circle of organizations that may not have the exact same goals as these projects and these organizations, but are still addressing AI or AI-related topics. Okay, this is a bird's eye view. So it is insanely detailed, and this also contains a lot of summaries, but this is the overall structure that we have currently, and I'll dive into it a little bit. So one is named to further human knowledge on AI and address key questions for EU policy on AI. That is taken from a formal goal that has been stated. So diving into that, there's core topics, core AI topics. So that's reasoning, it's planning, it's learning, it's communication and perception. And under that, you have knowledge representation, automated reasoning, common sense reasoning. Well, you have many very high level topics, which are actually taken from a JRC, from the Defining Artificial Intelligence report that they created. But this is how we propose to categorize the core AI research topics. Then there's a lot of transversal topics about integration and interaction, so multi-agent systems, but also robotics and automation. Also services, AI-based services, AI ethics, so trustworthy and ethical AI and sustainable AI, ethics and philosophy, so philosophy of AI is a separate topic. And there's also, of course, enablers, software and hardware systems, there's data, there's HPC to support training of large systems. Oh, the enablers are here as well. And there's also a number of other research topics, I'm usually not a big fan of having other categories as part of a taxonomy, because it shows that you haven't done your analysis carefully enough yet. But anyway, other topics like practical applications, exploring new AI paradigms. Moving on quickly. An ecosystem of excellence is another set in the taxonomy. So how do you achieve research excellence? So what activities do you propose in strengthening the research and innovation communities? But also, what effort do you place in focusing the efforts of the research and innovation communities? Skills is another one. Securing access to data, yet another one. Working with member states should also be part of the AI roadmap, just as to accelerate the adoption of solutions based on AI, partnering with the private sector, but also promoting the adoption by the public sector, focus on SMEs, international aspects. And then finally, an ecosystem of trust that addresses creating trust among citizens, minimize the risks of potential harm by AI. That's the AI regulation, of course, that's coming up, a regulatory framework for AI, and also governance. So the conclusion is that when you have a lot of information, it makes sense to draw a map. We still have to make decisions on what to put on the map. You could use Google Maps, for instance, but there's also the OpenStreetMap. Oh, sorry, that's going too quick. OpenStreetMap. And personally, I'm a fan of OpenStreetMap because it's much clearer. It contains the same information, but it makes different choices how to present it. So if we compare different types of roadmaps, these are just two examples from completely unrelated other roadmaps. But the question that we now have is, which map is the clearest? And then I propose that we can use such a taxonomy as a kind of a common language, and then every network of excellence can create their own roadmap in which they draft their own priorities. And maybe we can even reach a roadmap that contains this type of topics that we can compare between each other. So that is quickly to finish up this information overloaded presentation. So I summarized the theme development workshops, and I proposed a start of a common language to describe the topics that we are putting on the roadmaps from these networks of excellence projects. And with this, that was the last slide of the presentation. And I'm curious to see whether there are questions from the chat. So I don't see any questions in the chat yet.
So I have some questions actually.
Yeah.
For you.
Okay.
So thank you for this presentation. And the first question is, why is it so complicated to define what trustworthy AI is or should be? Broad question.
That's a really broad question. I think one of the aspects that we came across is this multidisciplinarity. Trustworthiness from a technical perspective could lead you towards things like accuracy and repeatability and all these kinds of technically defined things. But there's also a huge psychological part in it. If a system makes an error, then people tend to immediately conclude, oh, so this system doesn't work for me. They are much stricter towards machine errors than towards human errors. When a human is saying something, they accept that there may be a mistake. But when a machine, especially an impressive system, is making a prediction, they tend to become very disappointed when it doesn't work. I've heard that the acceptance to accept errors is 6 times higher for humans than towards systems. And then finally, you also have business considerations. Sometimes the system is designed in a specific way. For instance, the YouTube recommendation videos, they are designed to keep you on the YouTube platform as long as possible. That is their consideration. And you can understand it when you look at the business model. But that is maybe a different consideration than you as a human end user would want. So I think we have 3 realms of considerations that come together into one thing, trustworthy AI. I think that's, well, quite complicated.
Good way to answer a difficult question.
Yeah.
So the next question will probably be for Janina. How do you select people for the theme development workshops? And can participants suggest topics for the next ones?
Yeah, the participants could select their breakout sessions they want to join. And then we have a look at their experience, their affiliation, so that we have a gender balance, country balance, and balance between academia and industry. And that's our selection for the breakout sessions there. And there should be a mix between the startups, bigger companies, academia, postdocs, and so that we have a broad range of people joining then the breakout sessions.
All right, thank you. Then another question, which is, which of these topics do you think are specific for the goal European brand for trustworthy AI, and which ones are generic topics for any type of AI?
Yet again, yes. No, it's very hard to quickly respond to this. As one of the last slides showed, the topics that we thought were relevant for the European brand of trustworthy AI, but obviously there are other potential ways of AI, and most people are looking at well, the East Asian type of AI and the well, United States oriented AI, and no doubt that they will also have trustworthy AI considerations in their roadmaps. So I think that what we are usually paying most attention to in Europe is European values and also diversity. So multilinguality, but also the attention to minorities, avoiding bias. I think those are things that probably other AI developers from other continents will also say that they pay attention to, but I think in the European sphere, they are paramount to address.
Thank you. And then a last question. Is there any way to contribute to the TAILOR roadmap?
Do you start, Janina, or shall I start that you finish it off?
I think it's always a possibility to join the teams for the roadmap topics, but maybe only you can contact us via the email address, the TAILOR email address, and then we can have a look together what's possible here, and if it's possible that we can include other people, other topics here.
Yeah, and to add to that, the group within TAILOR that is working on the TAILOR roadmap, they have been organizing a workshop which was initially a public workshop. I think they changed it, but the intent is still to have public interactions around the roadmap. So that is also a way to interact. And of course, as Janina said, there are theme development workshops coming up. So everybody is free to register for those. And I also think that no doubt in the upcoming years, there will be a continuous debate about this roadmap, and there will also surely be public consultations organized by the VISION project. So there will be various ways to contribute, but for now, I would suggest for people to keep the TAILOR website on their screens on a regular basis.
Well, thank you very much to you both for answering our questions and for your presentations.
Thank you. Thank you all.
So I will now conclude this event by thanking all the speakers for their insightful presentations and all the participants for your attention and interest in VISION and in the ICT-48 networks. So I hope you found these presentations as interesting as I did. And all sessions, so all the sessions that happen in the European AI Week can be found online. And please bear in mind that you can still attend the last session of the European AI Week on the Global Partnership on AI, which is starting at 5 p.m. So thank you very much for being here and have a nice end of the week. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for organizing all of this. And it all went very well. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you very much.